Lewis made some really interesting comments about Ferrari in the press conference today that I wanted to make a longer video about because everyone's freaking out, but I actually see this as a very good thing. But first, of course, I must make you suffer through me reading aloud, which I'm terrible at, because I do think it's important to get the full context of the quote. And it's a long one, so buckle up. Obviously, you could just fast forward if it bothers you that much. I got this from ESPN, but you can also just watch the press conference. The race, I think, also did a write-up. Lewis says, I was at the factory for 2 weeks, a couple of days each week. We did preparation and naturally going over where we were on the previous race, things that we need to change. I held a lot of meetings. I've called on a lot of meetings with heads of the team. I've sat with Elkin, the CEO, Fred. I'm not going to read through that whole thing, but he says, talking about the engine for next year, talking about the front suspension for next year, talking about the rear suspension for next year, things you want, issues that you have and that I have with this car. I've sent documents through the year. After the first few races, I did a full document for the team. Then during this break, I had another 2 documents that I sent in. Some of it is structural adjustments that we need to make as a team in order to get better in all the areas that we want to improve. Then the other one was really about the car, the current issues that I have with the car, some things that you want to take on to next year's car, and some things that you need to work on changing for next year. We did development for, tried the 2026 car for the first time, and started work on that. And then he was asked why he made the documents for the team, and he said, the reason for it is that I see a huge amount of potential within the team. The passion, nothing comes close to that. It is a huge organization, and there's a lot of moving parts, and not all of them are firing on all of the cylinders that they need to be. That's ultimately why the team's not had the success I think it deserves. So I feel like it's my job to challenge absolutely every area, to challenge everybody in the team, particularly the guys that are at the top who are making the decisions. Critical. If you look at the team over the last 20 years, they've had amazing drivers. You've had Kimi, you've had Fernando, you've had Sebastian, all world championships. However, they didn't win a world championship with Ferrari, apart from Raikkonen. The with Ferrari apart from Raikkonen is in parentheses. He didn't say that. And for me, I'm like, I refuse to let that be the case with me. So I'm going the extra mile. This is peak I can fix him behavior, by the way. But you know what? I have faith in Lewis. I've obviously been very fortunate to have experiences in 2 other great teams. And while things are for sure going to be different because there's a different culture and everything, I think sometimes if you take the same path all the time, you get the same results. So I'm just challenging certain things. They've been incredibly responsive. We've been improving in so many areas through marketing, through everything. We're continuously delivering for sponsors, the way the engineers continue to work. There's a lot of work and improvements to be made, but very responsive. I guess ultimately just trying to create allies within the organization and get them G'd up. I'm not sure what that means. Getting them pushing for I'm here to win. And I don't have as much time as this one. He pointed to Kimi. So it's crunch time. I truly believe in the potential of this team. I really, really believe that they can win multiple world championships moving forward. They already have an amazing legacy, but during my time, that's my sole goal. What's weird about the reaction to this to me is that everybody's freaking out about the development part of this quote, which I felt like was kind of a non-story and not really the main point. But I obviously understand where that's coming from because people are like, oh my God, they're building the car around Lewis and whatnot. And I'm like, I don't even necessarily think that this indicates that. Like, of course, I would hope that they're having meetings about the 2026 car. Like, what? But also, I don't think that just because, I'm sure Charles is having these meetings as well. You know what I mean? I don't think this necessarily indicates that. But there have been a couple of articles sort of percolating saying that Lewis is having like more control over the future direction of the car than Charles. This is really just rumors, but even if that were to be the case, I think that the reason people are having such a negative reaction to that is because of the Carlos thing that just happened. But this is a very, very different situation than 2022 going into 2023. Because at that time, at the beginning of 2022, before they started developing, Ferrari had a race-winning car when the engine wasn't exploding, which to be fair was a concerning amount of the time. But the pace of the car was good. And they specifically developed it to make Carlos Sainz more comfortable. And I don't think that there's anything Lewis has said recently or done ever in his career to indicate to me that that would be his goal. I think Lewis wants to win. And to win, he needs to make that car faster. And I think that that benefits Charles as well, and that would be Charles's goal as well. And even if they're, which I feel like again, driving styles, I don't really know, but from what people say, it seems like their driving styles are maybe a little bit more aligned than Carlos and Charles's driving styles. But either way, if it makes the car a race-winning car, who fucking cares how it's designed around? And people kind of use this as a dig at Charles. And I don't necessarily like, oh, he hasn't been able to develop the car. And where I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily that either. Like you have to account for the whole 2022, 2023 debacle, which was explicitly they designed that car to make Carlos Sainz more comfortable. His dad told us. And furthermore, there was a Nico Rosberg segment at the beginning of that year that I found very interesting, where he was talking about how Ferrari seemed to have shifted the balance of their car backwards, therefore making it more understeery, as opposed to everybody else. He was like, they must have developed really hard in that direction because the regulations seem to be pushing everybody else in a more understeery direction. So the issue at hand was the fact that they were developing against what was most beneficial in this reg cycle, clearly, because that's what everybody else is trying to do, in order to make Carlos Sainz more comfortable. And you saw the result, like they fell backward to basically not right where they started, because 2020 was dark times, but they fell right back to the midfield. The main difference is that Lewis wants to win. Carlos wanted to beat Charles in order to establish himself in a more secure position within the team. Lewis doesn't have to worry about that because they handed him $100 million contract. Like, I know it's very taboo to talk about, but like, he is in a stronger position in the team. He has far more bargaining leverage than Charles does, and use that to make the car better. Like, that benefits everybody, does it not? And I really don't want this to evolve into like a number one, number two driver thing, because I don't think it makes Charles the number two driver. The number one driver is whoever qualifies ahead. I feel like 90% of the time when a team prescribes a number two driver, they don't do it by like secretly sabotaging one of the drivers. They do it by purposely signing a driver that will never have any hope of competing with the number one driver, which is a dangerous game, because if it goes too far in the other direction, like it can cost you majorly in the constructors and the drivers, as we saw in Abu Dhabi 2021. Obviously, there was much more fuck shit that went down with that, but if Valtteri Bottas had been where he was supposed to be and not languishing in P45, I think it was like P7 maybe, but Max would not have been able to execute that final pit stop because he would have had to pass Valtteri. And obviously Checo just moved aside. So, you know, it giveth and it taketh away, the 1-2 strategy, but whoever consistently out-qualifies the other will be the number one driver. If the other person doesn't really stand a chance in the Drivers' Championship, you will be the number one driver. Like, you can very much put yourself in that position. And yes, there's a lot of intangible things that can make that hard behind the scenes, but I really just don't see that as one of these situations with Ferrari. I think that Lewis, and also it's like the Ferrari development process is clearly fucked up somehow. Like, I'm glad that Lewis is maybe demanding these changes, and because to me, this is a lot more about process than the actual preference on what the development would be. The reality of the situation is that Ferrari's development has been a disaster for the greater part of a decade now. And to me, this quote is much more about process than preference on what specifically direction they go in or what developments they make. And I think the fact that he is openly questioning the process of Ferrari is a very good thing. Like, he says, I want to come in and address structural adjustments that we need to make as a team in order to get better in all areas. He obviously says that they're not firing on all the cylinders they should be. And I feel like it's my job to challenge absolutely every area, to challenge everybody in the team, particularly the guys at the top who are making the decisions. Like, isn't this not what most rational people have been screaming from the rooftops? And the thing is, Lewis is in a much better position to do this than Charles. Like, it's kind of a silly own against Charles that, oh, like, he couldn't fix it. Like, he had to have, like, Lewis has driven for two other competent World Drivers' Championship winning teams, and Charles has only ever driven for Sauber and Ferrari. So Lewis has a perspective that it would literally just be impossible for Charles to have. But it's not about Charles. The people that are truly whipped up about this are angry on behalf of Ferrari as an institution because they have a borderline religious, fanatical devotion to it that I genuinely find strange. To question Ferrari is sacrilegious to these people. And Lewis, make no mistake, is directly doing that and saying, you guys are, he's saying it in a much more kind, Lewis-like way, but he's basically like, y'all gotta get your shit together, like you really do. And I think particularly the part where he says, if you look at the team over the last 20 years, they've had amazing drivers. You've got Kimi, Fernando, Sebastian, but they couldn't do it with Ferrari. He's directly pushing back on Ferrari's central narrative, which is all of these drivers suck. They just couldn't get it done. Ferrari is perfect and has a race-winning car every year. Sebastian Vettel choked in 2018, paid no attention to the fact that our development was so bad that we just canned all of it and went back to the original spec car halfway through the year. Like, we have been on the same roller coaster for 10 mother argue that, oh, well, Kimi won a world championship. But I find that ironic because Kimi is actually a great example of the Ferrari clownery. Yes, he won in 2007, but he won despite Ferrari, not because of it. Need I remind you of Japan? What, 2-3 races toward the end of a championship that was decided by a single point? Ferrari, they started under safety car, and everybody knows, and Charlie Whiting sent a message to every single team, you must start on full wets if we are starting behind the safety car. What does Ferrari do? First row of the grid, sends them out on inters. What was the plan there? Like, obviously, did they think they just weren't gonna notice? And so they had to essentially start from the back for no fucking reason other than that Ferrari decided they wanted to get cute with it. That stopped recording sometime in the middle of my Japan 2007 rant, but I just want to make sure that I got in the point that it was raining so hard, like a monsoon. They would literally never do a race in these conditions today, and that's definitely a good thing, okay? But my point is that inters weren't the move. Like that, even if they had been allowed to be on inters, it would have been a terrible decision. In 2008, in Singapore, they leave the fuel hose attached to Felipe Massa's car and signal him to go, and it just completely knocks him down to 13th, I think he ended up, maybe it was 14th he finished in that race. Like, the operational issues and just general clownery from Ferrari is a result of bad systems and processes. They make these silly and inexplicable mistakes far, far more often than the other teams. Like the fact that they act like it's impossible to predict the weather. I'm now just ranting about random things. And when any of these silly mistakes happen, they will never admit that they've made a mistake. And to be honest, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, so it's possible that they're thoroughly examining their systems and processes every single time and being like, how can we prevent this from happening in the future? But it's hard to believe that when publicly they will always find a way to shift blame to the driver, which is what I find so interesting and why I feel like people were so triggered by that list of drivers, because Lewis is subtly but directly pushing back against the narrative that it's always the driver's fault, and implying that Ferrari does in fact make mistakes, which watching Formula One, you wouldn't think is a controversial thing to say, but it almost certainly is. And it's very interesting. I talked about this as well when Lewis first joined the team. It's kind of the unstoppable force versus the immovable object narrative-wise, because it continues to amaze me the way that Ferrari is continually able to pin, like everyone is like, yeah, Sebastian Vettel sucks, that's why they lost in 2018 and 2017. Not the, yes, Sebastian crashed one time, two times, but one time at the end of 2017 that everybody always brings up. But his engine also, within the last 5 races of the season, his engine exploded and then he had another mechanical DNF because the spark plugs didn't work. So, and then of course the 2018 development. Did Seb make mistakes? Yes, because the classic thing, it always happens with Ferrari, shout out France 2022, is that they put their drivers in these impossible situations and are like, well, you have to overcome this with your talent. And they push probably harder than they should to try and overcome the shitty position that they've been put in. And then eventually when they push too hard and they make a mistake, Germany 2018, oh, look, he made that's it. He made a mistake. He sucks. It's all his fault. And it works every fucking time. I saw it happen to Seb. I'm watching it happen to Charles in real time. But Lewis is a veteran of this game, because a Seb, a Charles, a Fernando, even a Kimi, these are people that grew up as golden boys. They didn't have the racist ass Daily Mail breathing down their neck from literally the day they stepped in the paddock. Lewis has been playing this game on hard mode for a very, very long time, and I don't think that Ferraris, combined with the fact that I feel like it is getting, people are waking up, so to speak, it's getting harder to pull off because we just have so much more information now than we ever had before. We have the driver cams, we have live timing data in a more immediate way than we did before. We have a lot more direct communication with the drivers through social media, stuff like that. Reporters see what the audience is saying and back and forth. Like, the Sky Sports state media monopoly basically no longer exists, right? But also, Lewis is a lot savvier at this game than many Formula One drivers. So it is kind of interesting to watch that unfold. Like, the fact that, but I don't know, he has toed the line. Like, you have to be strategic with it, right? You can't just come in and talk shit or you'll get fired like Prost did. But the fact that this statement is pretty radical, and I love it because it indicates to me that at least somebody out there in the world understands, that has direct input on the situation, understands the nature of the problem, and that there are structural changes that need to be made. And while Lewis will always say and do the right things, the red car, it's a dream, everybody wants to drive for Ferrari, my read of Lewis Hamilton, watching him throughout the years, is that he is an aggressively practical person. I don't think that you could get to where Lewis Hamilton has gotten in Formula One as a black man without being very pragmatic. I also think that if he were swayed by such romantic notions, and I mean romantic in the literary sense, not in the interpersonal sense, then he wouldn't have left McLaren, because Senna drove for McLaren and won with McLaren and all of these things. And that is the team that he joined Formula One with, and they sponsored him when he was a kid and believed in him and all of that. So to jump ship to Mercedes, to me, demonstrates that practicality. And I think that Lewis is maybe not as blind and delusional as maybe a Sebastian Vettel, a Charles, someone who is fully, it's a cult. I mean, it's literally crazy. Like, sometimes with Seb and Charles, I love him, but I also just think it's a matter of perspective. Like, Lewis, especially with Charles, Lewis has that direct Mercedes and McLaren experience. He has something to compare it to in a way that Charles wasn't. He was indoctrinated into this cult young. The Ferrari-pilled people are not going to like this video, but these are not rational individuals. It's the same people that are like, Ferrari doesn't need Adrian Newey. I have nothing to say. You will never agree with me, but I just don't know how you can sit here and watch what has gone down at the Scuderia Ferrari over the course of every single season for the last 10 years and be like, this is a well-oiled machine, baby. And, oh, I forgot to say, I'm ending the video and I totally forgot this point with the Kimi thing. But the craziest part about using Kimi as a pushback against Ferrari's clownery is that they fired him, allegedly, 8 races later because they wanted to sign Fernando because of Santander. And that's a conspiracy theory, but I feel like it's a true conspiracy theory. Kimi is the #1 victim of Ferrari's bullshit. They started undermining him almost immediately. And the sabotage of it all, I don't know if I fully believe that part, but I do believe that they signed Fernando's ass at Monaco in 2008. So that's all I'm saying. This video is maybe all over the place. I'm sure I'll have a great time editing it, but shout out to Lewis. And I really hope that he can indeed fix him because it will benefit Charles. And obviously I'm rooting for Charles because I do want Lewis to get his 8th. I love Lewis, but Charles doesn't have any world championships, okay? I need him to get 1. And then once he wins 1, I will root for Lewis to get his 8th. And then I will go back to rooting for Charles. I thought long and hard about this, as you could tell.